Hi, today you're going to start an essay. So don't freak out, we've done this before, but we're just going to kind of get you started. If you don't feel like you need this video, that's fine, but if you're feeling a little insecure, then this is a way you can know what's going on. So first thing is log into Google Classroom and look for the prompt, week 15 prompt, a full essay. Just as a reminder, you're going to use your own paper for all of this. So before you do anything else right now, you need to pause and get paper. So to write the prompt, analyze the prompt, work through this whole process, you're going to use your own paper to help simulate what it would really be like on SOL day. No one's going to give you a chart or something like that. So find paper, find something to write with, take breaks as you need, and maybe just fast forward until you find a part that you actually need. It would also be a really good idea to find your elaboration notes, especially parts 1 and 2, so the list of transitions, as well as the cage thing, types of elaboration. So if you have what you need, go ahead and click on the actual prompt, and it'll pop up. And at this point, I'm going to switch to paper, so this is what you're looking at. So here is the prompt. You're only going to pick one. You only have to pick one, but we're going to read all three just to make sure that you know what's going on. Remind yourself how many times you should read it. The answer is at least twice. So here's option A. The ancient Greek storyteller Aesop said, "No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." Explain how small acts of kindness can have an impact on others. Use specific details and examples in your response. B. What makes someone a success? Explain how you define success using specific details and examples in your response. Or C. Civil rights leader Mahatma Gandhi wrote, "Be the change you want to see in the world." What is one way you would like to change the world, and how can you help bring about this change? Use specific details and examples in your response. So I'm going to go back through and just mark things that are important. So this quote, you don't have to really use. It's just there to kind of base it on something. We're going to explain how small acts of kindness can have an impact on others. So the key is small acts of kindness, and what do they actually do? For B, what makes someone a success? So explain how you define success. This is the whole point. What is success? C, this quote is like great and all, but that's not what they want to do. So what is one way you would like to change the world, and how can you bring about this change? So the first thing you're going to do on your paper is figure out for each of these, what is the topic, what is the audience, what is the purpose. So it kind of depends which one you pick. So let's think this through. If you're picking A, the topic is small acts of kindness. You're only really writing about small acts of kindness, not giving somebody $1 million, not buying someone a house, small acts of kindness, and the impact they have on others. So for this one, we're going to write the impact of small acts of kindness. That's what we're going to write about. For B, we're going to define success. What makes somebody a success in your eyes? Not like a dictionary definition, but how would you tell someone is successful? And for C, this one's a little tricky. What is one way you would like to change the world, and how can you bring about this change? So one, change to the world, and how you can actually do it. So if you are just writing about a change you would like to see, keep in mind that you also have to mention how you would do that. One change. The audience for all of these is just a general audience. There's no specific. It doesn't say to like persuade a person or whatever. Your purpose for all of these, defining, explaining how you can help. So this is all to explain. It's expository. So keep this in mind if you choose B. This is not like a one-sentence thing. You'd have to come up with a big enough definition of success that could lead to at least two or three different paragraphs, including plus an intro conclusion. So, which one do you want to pick? It kind of depends. Keep in mind that this is the impact of small acts of kindness. This is we're going to come up with a big enough definition of success to create paragraphs, and this is we're going to talk about a change we want and how we can bring it about. So on your own paper, you should have your actual prompt. I would just spell out what you're going to write about. Put it in your own words. You're going to have this. And then you're going to start brainstorming. And I'm going to kind of talk you through this if you need it. First thing is let's think if we're brainstorming about the impact of small acts of kindness, then we could maybe list off lots of small acts of kindness, list all the things you could think about, and maybe they impact like 3 different groups of people. So small acts of kindness impact children, adults, and the elderly. Small acts of kindness impact us at school, at home, and at church, or in public. So you could think places, like group them together by places, or by age groups, or something like that. But have like all your acts of kindness you can think of, and maybe look for common places or common age groups. If you're talking about, I'm just going to flip it over. If you're talking about how you define success, you pick B, then you need to literally ask yourself, what is success? And a defining circle map is appropriate for that. So everything you can think of that would be successful. What does success mean to you? Is it all money? Is it fame? Is it power? Is it accomplishments? And so then you're going to have to look for things that go together. Does success happen in school, at home, and at work? Does success mean you have this, this, this? Is it 3 specific things you're looking for? But you would have to eventually define success. Like, to be successful means you have blah, blah, blah. For the last one, it's a little different. So for C, if you're really thinking about C, you're looking for one change to the world and how you're going to get it. So you need to think about what changes, what change would you actually talk about. Look for one you could write about, and you're going to brainstorm about how you could actually get it. How can you do that? So you could do this a couple of different ways. You could pick one change and have 3 different hows. You could pick one change with 2 to 3 categories, and then a paragraph about how you're going to get to it. It just kind of depends how you want to set it up. This, if you can think of a lot of ways to do it, would be good. This would be if you can't think of a lot of ways to do it, but you can come up with some categories. So for instance, if you said the change I would like to see is let's say, better treatment of people, both in school and, let's say, prison, and I will work for it. If this was like your thesis, and I'm not saying it is, but if you had a thesis like this, you're really talking about one change, and you're talking about how you would do it, and this is kind of your thesis. So don't just mention the change. We're still talking about one thing, how we treat people. You're just kind of mentioning places and that you're going to work for it. The paragraph about how you're going to work for it, you could get into way more detail. So that one's the most complicated, but it's a really good option. I would pick it if you're feeling confident today. This one, you could think of lots of examples of people, and you could say, success to me means whatever this is. Success means, and don't say being successful. Duh. It means 3 different accomplishments, or it means 3 different attributes, like people respect you, or I don't know, whatever it is to you. So 2 to 3 big categories. If you're doing A and you're talking about small acts of kindness, then your thesis needs to include that phrase. Small acts of kindness impact what? So they impact either maybe 3 different places. They can impact your home, your church, your school. They can impact how we act in public and at home. They can impact maybe different age groups, children and adults. But these are your categories. They impact whatever your categories are. So don't list 3 different small acts of kindness. Your thesis needs to include they impact or they affect.
Front team.
Sorry if you heard a weird intercom call and pause. My bad. Okay, so all I want you to think about is how to get to a really good thesis statement, and then you should know what to do from there. So the impact of small acts of kindness, how you define success, and the examples you use can involve people, but the big picture should be how you define success. Or think about a change that you could see and how you can make it happen. So my suggestion is don't pick a change that's like way too big for you to make happen, just one little change. If you feel like you need to pause and get to a really good thesis statement, then pause and get to a thesis statement and restart this video at 13:27. If you're joining me now, you should have a thesis statement. So we're going to work on our intro conclusion. Just as a reminder, you want to start broad and narrow down to your thesis. Not that it has to fit inside a triangle, but that we're starting out broad and we're narrowing down to our thesis. So if you have a thesis, go ahead and put it. If you don't, you probably need to get one. When you're doing your conclusion, keep in mind you'll have a whole body of an essay in between. You want to restate your thesis with a transition word. We practiced this in part 3 of elaboration, where you had different transitions to use in your conclusion, and restating, not saying the exact same thing. So I would maybe split it into 2 sentences. And then the big deal here is you make a point. What is the point? What should people do with this information now that you've given it to them? Should they work towards success? Should they go change something? Like, what do you want people to do with all this information? So the key is start broad, maybe include your topic. You could include one of those quotes if it's a quote prompt, but be really careful with that because if you have the punctuation or commas or quotation marks off, then that counts as a mechanical error. Plus, most people are going to start with that quote. So you don't have to start with a quote. You could talk about change in general. You could talk about success in general. You could talk about people who are unsuccessful and then lead into, but I think success is when you do blah, blah, blah. You could talk about kindness or large acts and how that's not always the best, but small acts can make an impact. However you want to do it, start talking about your topic and be really broad and then narrow it down. You don't have to write this, just actually do it. Narrow it down to your thesis. Restate your thesis with a transition. That would make sense. Split it up a little bit. Don't give any new reasons in your conclusion because this is just wrapping it up, and then make a point. This is kind of step 2 of this process. Once you have a thesis, work on this. So if I were you, I would pause right here and pick back up at 16 minutes 15 seconds for part 3. For part 3 of this essay, you should be able to have a flea map. This is my not yet drawn makeshift flea map. So we're going to say body of your essay, flea map, and you know how this should go. So I don't need to restate, I don't need to write my thesis again, just know what you should have. This is going to be my paragraph that I fully elaborate. So my topic sentence, whatever elaboration I choose, and then my wrap-up sentence. If you have 3 paragraphs, then draw it 3 times. If you don't like the boxes, do it your way, but you still need a topic sentence, details and examples, and a wrap-up sentence. So we'd have our intro, our flea map, and our conclusion. Okay? This is where I need you to take a second and think about everything we've talked about for the past week or so. We've talked about elaboration techniques. We've talked about transition words, and we're not going to do this flea map together. That's up to you, but you should know that if this is your topic sentence 1, then it comes from your first big category in your thesis. You could clarify, you could give an example, a general example. You could have another, like you need a transition, you need another transition. You need another transition, and then maybe what type are you going to use? Are you going to use another example? You have another transition, maybe you give an anecdote. Another transition, maybe use an experience, and then another transition, use another anecdote, and you're going to conclude with a sentence that's very similar to your topic sentence. We've done this before several times, and now you have this bank of techniques to use for elaboration. So ask yourself, if you cover this part up, would it still make sense? These together should still make sense. This just does more about it. So maybe first, next, finally. Maybe for example, for instance, one time and these should still go together. So do this however many times you have topic sentences, however many times you have categories. If you only pick 2 big categories, then just do it twice. But maybe realize that you need to add like a 4th reason or example to your essay. Wrap up each paragraph, and then that would be different than your conclusion, but it still shows organization. This part's going to take some time, and that's okay. But it shouldn't take forever. Because if you really actually mean it, you should be able to give examples or tell about an experience of yourself or someone else, or tell a little story, and that could take 2 or 3 sentences. But the story still brings it back to what you're actually writing about. So this part right here, you want to make sure you're on track. You keep it focused, use good transitions, make sense, and then really you could type from this. If you have your intro conclusion laid out, That's your first paragraph. And then this is your second, and your third, and your fourth, and then your conclusion is your fifth. If you only have 2 body paragraphs, that's okay, as long as they're really awesome. So look back at your previous examples, look back at your transition list, look back at that cage thing, like know in your mind if you're always using the same types of elaboration, it gets really boring. So don't just clarify every time. Like, you would be successful, you would have lots of money, you would pay your bills, like that's all the same thing. So make sure you're switching it up a little bit. Tell stories, have some fun with it, ask for help if you need it.